Hi all, welcome to the 27. This video is a custom setup analysis of the BMW M6 at Hockenheim under these racing conditions. Stick around.
We get that fresh glaze on the D-low, pulling up, smoking haze through the back door. We get that fresh glaze on the D-low.
So I had a conversation with Kuza Red on Reddit the other day. Hi Kuza. Anyway, it led me to think there was an opportunity to present these setups to you in a different way. So instead of taking a cinematic approach and simply providing the tabs at the end, I thought perhaps it would help you guys more if I explained what changes I made to the M6 and why. So if you feel this is more helpful to you, let me know in the comments. The M6 was a tricky car to tune for Hockenheim. Naturally, it's a pointy car when it really shouldn't be. And on top of this, the first thing I noticed was that it was squatting down the back straight, which means the rear ride height was lower than the front. This is obviously not an optimal aerodynamic situation, but it did add some stability to the M6, as it has a tendency to be a bit temperamental in the rear. But this is just masking a problem. So anytime you start changing the aerodynamic balance of the car, rake and ride height, you have to adjust the suspension to suit. So this is basically a from scratch build. To get rid of the squat, I raised the rear ride height and stiffened the rear springs. This changed the mechanical weight bias of the car in the corners, and you really want them to be neutral there. So to offset this, I reduced the anti-roll bar in the rear a little bit. We actually reduced the rear wing too for that straight line speed, but not too much so that the car over-rotated on the high speed sections like turn 4 and 12. Hockenheim has some really heavy braking zones too, which is not usual for tracks. It has one at 2, 6, 8, and 15, I think, which the BMW handles beautifully. It's really a world-class dive bomber. So to further add balance and maximize this braking, I softened the front springs. This actually added a touch more grip on corner entry, but this was easily offset by stiffening the front ARBs. So on braking though, it had a tendency to pitch a little bit more than the defaults did. I think the defaults generally needed to have the brake bias balanced forward as well, but we had to add a couple extra clicks in that department. So you'll see that the brake bias is 67 to the front. After I felt the suspension was well balanced, I tinkered with the low and high speed dampers. Low speed dampers manage the springs, the oscillations of the springs during transient conditions. So like when the car's weight is shifting, when you're turning, or when you're braking and accelerating. The high speed handles the bumps, rumble strips, and curbs. The M6 can handle curbs only to a point though. You can't handle them like the Merc or the Porsche because you'll upset the aero of the M6, which I found was generally quite finicky. I also found that they favored the rebound aspect of the dampers, but I balanced those all out for you. The next major challenge with the M6 was the differentials. The defaults were quite open for my taste, and this is fine sometimes, but it made the nose a bit too pointy, especially mid-corner. The car really wanted to rotate, and the ride height and rake adjustments that I made to fix out the aero made this worse. So rotation generally is good to a certain point, but the differential here didn't do the car any favors. If the M6 over-rotated, there was no recovery. The differential basically watched and let it happen. You had to be perfect, otherwise you were looking backwards really quickly. So even if you control it, all that slip adds unnecessary heat to the rear tires as well. So I locked both the coast and power ramp quite a bit actually. This added, I think, stability in all phases of the corner. Just when you're driving the car, make sure to round the tight corners as much as you can and be patient with the throttle. Build confidence with it. It's not going to bite you. The car will take off when you feel it's pointed in the right direction, as a locked rear differential, especially on power, adds some really great acceleration and drive. It also takes away some of the squirreliness that you might find at the top end of the power band on the second gear. It's actually really good to control rear tire temperatures on a hot track, which is the case here, and I completely zeroed out the preload. You simply don't need the rears to help you turn with this build. All the while I was tinkering with the cambers and the pressures so that the contact patch was optimal. We made some final toe adjustments for taste. We removed all the front toe, added a touch to the rear. Finally, with track temperatures this high, we opened the ducts a bit more to control the core temperature of the tire. This allows you to push when you need to, but then also cool off the tires when you don't. What we wound up with was a car that was, I felt, aerodynamically sound, well balanced, and stable. Some track tips for Hockenheim with this build: turns 8, 9, 14, and 17 are generally tricky. They're the ones with the undulations and the off-camber turns. Another reason why I added differential stability. You will have to play with the throttle a bit here, especially when you're really flying, but the car is well balanced for an easy recovery. Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure to try the defaults for a few laps, then try mine. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. The description below will have a list of upcoming setups. In the meantime, take care.